annual financial support from viewers like you.
What do you want? 10 seconds. I haven't even brushed or shaved my teeth. Come on, hold it. Hello? Oh, hi, John. I just don't have time to talk about that PBS series about time right now. I'm in the middle of preparing for my show. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
At the tone, Eastern Standard Time, 12 hours, 42 minutes, exactly.
A specter haunts the United States, time famine. A Harris poll says work time since 1973 is up 15%, while leisure time is down 37%. For the first time ever, a majority of Americans say they would trade a day's pay for a day off work each week. Advertisers say that time is the luxury of the 1990s.
Can I help you?
Yeah, I'd like a spare moment, 2 hours to catch up, and 10 seconds to go.
Wouldn't it be nice if you could actually buy time?
Just give me a minute, would you?
Well, you can buy time. Extra working time with mobile phone service US West Cellular.
Hi, I'm Scott Simon. I think I can find a few minutes to talk about this. Do you remember a few years ago when we were working on all kinds of labor-saving gadgets, said that we'd soon have more leisure time on our hands than we'd know what to do with?
The mechanical feeler does the trick. Sort of a radar antenna that steers a newly perfected, completely automatic lawnmower at Ridgewood. Smile. Why not? All she had to do was cut one strip around the outside of the lawn and then set the mower on automatic. From then on, there's nothing to do but drink a toast to a time saver that feels its way along. To make a long story short, Grass Finder makes short shrift of the lawn while you have a tall...
I don't know whatever became of Grass Finder, but most of us use many labor-saving devices each and every day. And in the end, what do they save us? Do you feel that you have more leisure time? Leisure time. Do you have any?
Funny that you're
Zero.
talking.
We're just discussing that.
Leisure time or the lack?
The
lack thereof.
Leisure time what?
How do you use it? Do you have a lot of it?
Don't have any of it.
Do you find you have less leisure time than you used to?
Yeah, because I have to work harder for the buck.
I don't have too much leisure time. That's just about it there.
Monsanto's House of the Future is open to the public at Disneyland.
It's an old promise, the claim that technology would give us time, a golden age of leisure before the year 2000. American productivity has more than doubled since World War II, but the promised age of leisure seems farther away than ever. We got the technology, but we didn't get the time.
It's kind of a cruel joke. In our society, we are obsessed with developing every kind of labor-saving, time-saving device to save time, and yet we feel we have less time than any culture in history.
Go already!
What's happened? What's all of this time pressure done to ourselves, to our families, and our communities? Are there alternatives to living this way, to running desperately in what many people consider to be a rat race until one day we simply drop? Stay with us and find out.
Machine for 8 hours, your hands, arms, just your whole body gets tired, your eyes, your mind even. I am extremely tired right now.
Angela Walrond is a postal worker. She's divorced, the mother of children. Her shift starts at 6 a.m. and lasts for 8 hours, officially. But all too often, mandatory overtime can stretch that shift to 10 hours, and at Christmas even 12. Then her second shift begins.
I got foot in the house and one foot out the door. If I only had the time, if I only had the time, if I wasn't working overtime, I'd love you more and more.
Okay, now what times are the practices? Oh, I see,
Mario!
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to play basketball?
Yes.
I come home, cook dinner, clean up, wash clothes, help Mario with his homework. How about happy? What's happy? 2 minutes. There's days, though, when I just stop and say, oh, I can't do anymore. And then the kids are in the background, Mom, we were supposed to, you promised, and this, so I keep going. I think I'm fairly typical.
1 of every 2 Americans now gets too little sleep. But in this family, it's 3 out of 3.
Like tonight, I probably won't be in bed till about 11. I'll be tired in the morning. The clock goes off about 3:30. I get up at 4, so I have 1 hour to get everybody ready and get everything done so we can make it out of the house at 5 o'clock. Say your blessing. And then if I couldn't get them in the bed the night before when they're supposed to be in bed, which is o'clock, and they're up past 9, then they don't want to get up in the morning. So then we go all morning. Yeah, 10 years from now, I have somebody else iron my clothes for me.
Undoubtedly, single working parents like Angela are the hardest pressed for time, but even 2-parent families can feel the crunch.
Where it used to take 1 wage earner to support a family of typically 3 kids. A father would go to work and bring home enough money to support the mother and the 3 children. Now it takes at least 2 wages to support only 2 children.
What that means is this. Most American families used to have 2 jobs, 1 in the marketplace and 1 at home. They now have 3. Domestic chores must still be done.
It begins to feel like families speed up, that much more has to be done quicker just to maintain what used to be done in a more livable way just 1 generation ago.
More Americans are working today, and full-time employees are working more, as much as 160 hours or 1 full month more per year than they did in 1969, according to a recent Best by Harvard economist, Juliet Shore.
What I found is that people of all income groups have been working longer hours. It's not only the people in the high income groups, who, by the way, have been working much longer hours. It's also the middle classes, the lower classes, and the poor.
Shore says we now work longer regular hours and more overtime than we did 25 years ago, while taking vacations and spending more time commuting. Her findings are sometimes challenged, but pollsters are Americans certainly feel constantly rushed.
It's all about fax machines, computer, videotape recorders, cellular telephones, all these things that when you were watching Walt Disney in the 1950s, he told you were going to have all these labor-saving devices. They don't save anybody any labor, they just make more stuff. Everybody's got more stuff now. I mean, I got stuff, you got stuff, he's got stuff. Everybody's just all this stuff. And it's more stuff than people can deal with now.
Life in the fax lane is productive. We now have bigger houses, extra appliances, far more material. But all of that requires time. Time to earn enough money to buy them, time to use and maintain them. Even our celebrated American freedom of choice exacerbates this problem. Shoppers now frequently choose from among 25,000 items on supermarket shelves. That, too, takes time.
You know, this is an issue, I think, that really does cross class lines and race lines and gender lines. Nobody has any time out there.
Time for families, time for friends, time for community, all are being squeezed. One poll found 1/3 of the people who didn't vote in a recent election said they just no longer had the time to vote. Another study concluded that dual-income couples find only 12 minutes a day to talk to each other.
How does one develop a relationship unless one takes time? We wonder why we have fewer and fewer bonds, fewer and fewer connects, because of time. If people want to reestablish community, it takes time.
Parents today spend about 40% less time with their children than they did a generation ago. At daycares like this one in Boston, the children come earlier now, and they stay later.
The parents appreciate the fact that, you know, I take them in earlier. My hours are usually from 7:30 to 5:30. But you might get parents that have to be in to work like 6 in the morning and the child has to be dropped off like 5.
A recent Los Angeles Times poll found that a majority of American parents feel guilty about spending too little time with their children.
For June and Ward Cleaver, the biggest fears that they may have had a generation ago were that Wally and Beef might be caught up in some of Eddie Haskell's schoolboy pranks. Parents today, the fears and the concerns that they have about their children are more serious. We're living in an age, after all, with high teen sexuality, high teen pregnancy, AIDS, violence in schools. This is a very, very different sort of environment in which children are being raised. And for that reason, many parents are convinced that their involvement in the lives of children is actually even more important today than it was a generation ago.
Best and probably only predictor of success in education is parental involvement.
Dr. Brad Googans teaches a popular class on time and family issues at Boston University and has been researching the subject for many years.
Everybody's saying they're running out of time. We asked this recently at a company, how many days of vacation did you take last year? And I'm shocked that 23% said none, 0 days of vacation.
Not only are we working longer today, we're working faster and faster and faster. These letter sorters must punch in a zip code every second. New technologies increase the pace of work, then measure performance.
26 million workers in this country are monitored by the machines that they work on, and that number is growing. I had one woman tell me that her screen periodically flashed, you're not working as fast as the person next to you.
The result is an epidemic of stress that now costs the American economy more than $100 billion a year. Leading heart specialists say we're moving too fast, and the pace is killing us.
We call it time urgency. Physiologically, we've seen the toll that's on the body, that speeding up, that rushing. And people who tend to do that really jeopardize their health and whether or not they're going to live a full, long life.
We think that time urgency is the major cause of premature heart disease in this country.
Right, today is September 1991, and I'm talking to Mr. John DeGraff, correct? He is a television producer.
At San Francisco's famous Meyer-Friedman Institute, where the term type A was coined to describe hairy, heart attack-prone people, a cardiac candidate is tested for time urgency.
Do you walk fast?
Yes.
Do you eat fast?
Yes.
One characteristic of time-urgent personalities is polyphasing, or doing several things at the same time. Some people become very adept at this.
Mom.
Let me demonstrate, for example, how a jogger can do a lot of things besides jogging. The well-equipped jogger these days wears a Walkman, uses a drink helmet with soft drink piped into his mouth, and simultaneously squeezes a piss exerciser, doing three things at once besides jogging: exercising, drinking, and listening, all at the same time.
Better yet, if you shave both sides of your face at once, you could shave about a minute out of every day, which would save you about 360 hours over an average lifetime.
I was writing a list, watching a ball game, a kid, and trying to do something else all at one time, and I realized...
For the men in this treatment group at the Meyer-Friedman Institute, polyphasing isn't a stunt, it's a problem. They've all been diagnosed as severe type A's. Learning to control time urgency reduces their high risk of heart attacks and other health problems.
This is your pencil right here.
But while medical experts warn their patients to slow down or die, even childhood is being pushed onto a fast track. Remember summer camp, leisurely days of swimming and baseball? Well, welcome to summer camp in the 90s. At this one and many others, children as young as 3 learn computer to jump on their peers. Many spend 8 hours a day on those machines, long hours for children. Still, that could be the kind of training that's needed in today's competitive world economy.
We compete globally with people who work tremendously long hours. And we as a company suggest that we always view ourselves like a fellow on a road car, pumping the hand car as you go along the track, and we always hear the train somewhere behind us, and we never know how long we have.
The Japanese who ride that fast train work 200 hours, 5 full weeks more than we do. price of their tickets may be life itself.
The idea that the Japanese need to work longer hours is an extremely flawed idea, because their long working hours are understood to be a serious social and economic problem. And what the Japanese have finally come to realize is that they are working too many hours for their own good.
This is Tokyo, the busiest in the world. Still a recent recession, headquarters for one of its fastest growing economies.
The rhythm of life is very different. And I find that when I'm in Tokyo, I physically walk much faster. And then when I go back to the States and I'm walking on my Tokyo time, you know, I'm zooming ahead of everyone else and they're saying, wait up for us, you know, this is not Japan.
Tokyo for the Los Angeles Times, Teresa Watanabe frequently compares life in Japan with that in her native United States.
If you look at the 6 productivity, American productivity is much higher than Japanese productivity. Fatigue is probably one reason. And if you go on the trains, you will see people sleeping on the trains, even if they're standing up. You know, they're sort of standing and hanging onto the strap, but they're sleeping.
You can frequently see Japanese employees working late into the night in their offices. Often overworked business people can no longer find the time to visit their elderly relatives. So they rent a family, an actual, real, rapidly growing business in which you pay actors to play family members. A 3-hour visit costs $1,000.
People are getting so busy, families are splitting up, they don't have time to see grandma and grandpa, and so this business has sort of sprung up to take care of that need. And I have to admit, when I first heard of it, I found it a little bit bizarre, but on the other hand, when I went and talked to those people and I saw the honest-to-goodness joy that they brought these elderly, lonely people, I thought that they're really doing a noble thing, you know, to meet that kind of need.
But however harsh it is on family life, the darkest secret of the Japanese economy is the phenomenon called karoshi, death from overwork.
We estimate in a year over 10,000 people die from karoshi in Japan.
These members of the Karoshi Family Association have all lost husbands or sons to overwork. They seek answers to the epidemic of sudden deaths and compensation for the loss of their relatives.
My husband was the manager of a supermarket. He usually got up at 5 a.m. and then work at 5:30 without breakfast. He came home around 10 or 11, had dinner, and that was his home life.
One day, at the age of 34, Shigeyuki Ariga felt so tired and ill, he took a day off. It was too late. He collapsed that night and died of heart failure. Polls show younger Japanese want more time for family and recreation, even if it means fewer materials. At the offices of Zenroren, one of Japan's largest unions, a campaign for hours is in full swing. The union is fighting for a work year of 1,800 hours. That's 150 less than in the United States, and far less than the 2,200 hours Japanese employees now average.
So we've seen how we moderns, at least in the United States and Japan, are working longer hours but enjoying it less. On the other hand, the people who worked in the farms and the fields and the factories a century and more ago worked even longer and harder hours. Whatever our complaints, we still have more free time than any other people in history, don't we?
The Machi-genga struck me as being people who always have enough time. They're never in a hurry.
Anthropologist Alan Johnson still remembers wistfully the 2 years he spent with the Machi-genga, a Peruvian rainforest tribe.
It's just a pleasure to be around the Machi-genga when they're working. They're calm, they're physically comfortable, and there's the sense of them enjoying it the way we might enjoy a hobby, a craft. No time pressure.
Contrary to popular wisdom, so-called primitive societies frequently enjoy more time than we do. Anthropologists say that such societies are able to meet their need for food, clothing, and shelter in just a few hours a day. The rest of their time devoted to socializing and other leisure activities.
The Machi-genga certainly are able to meet all of their needs with 6 to 8. hours of work, and that leaves a lot of time.
Alan Johnson found it hard to leave the tranquil world of the Machigenga and return home.
And it was a very strange feeling. Here I was walking in West Los Angeles down the street, and I was in a kind of time warp where everybody around me was moving extremely fast, sort of like a surrealistic scene from a movie or something, where I was just really slow and really comfortable, and all around me people were hurrying and scurrying.
Classical Western civilization shared the belief that leisure was important to develop a community and to foster an understanding of life.
For the Greeks, no doubt, work is for being free and doing the arts, liberal arts, writing, speaking, conversation.
An expert on ethical philosophy, Dr. Benjamin Honeycutt, teaches leisure studies. He works hard at it, but always long, often leaving campus early to spend time with his children.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I think that work has become a religion. We answer the traditional religious questions. Who am I? Where am I going? What does it all mean? What must I do to be saved? All of these traditional religious questions are now all answered increasingly with work.
Ben Honeycutt believes that we've turned the wisdom of antiquity upside down, wrong side up.
Before the 20th century, work was a means to an end. The 20th century has reversed that, and work becomes an end in itself. And consequently, leisure is transformed. Instead of being the purpose of work, I'm working for something better. The transformation, the metamorphosis occurs. There's nothing better. Leisure, then, is important only in search to work. It's trivialized. It amounts to laying in the hammock or collapsing in television set. All active components, the community involvement, the time spent with children, for example, all of those things are made less important by virtue of the importance, the exploding importance of work.
Even serfs in the Middle Ages toiled less than we do. Experts estimate that an average workday in medieval Europe was 9 or 10 hours long, longer in summer, shorter in winter. However, agricultural labor was often performed at a leisurely pace, and it was abandoned entirely during scores of holy days. At the beginning of the Renaissance, religious holidays in some parts of Europe amounted to more than 150 a year. But in Benedictine monasteries like this one in England, a new ideology, glorifying work and demanding strict observation of time, had already taken root. To work is to pray, said St. Benedict. Idleness is the enemy of the soul. Therefore, at fixed times, he said, the brothers ought to be occupied in manual labor, and again at fixed times, in sacred reading.
Benedict said that even bodily functions had to be performed in scheduled set times. So if you were a medieval monk, if you had to go, you had to wait.
Till when? Till a bell, or in the late Middle Ages, a new invention called the clock proclaimed the appointed hour.
When you go to any medieval town now, you see that town clock. It's a centerpiece for a new way of organizing society. And once you could organize people by putting them regular hours, minutes, you could get them into an industrial frame of mind, which requires standardization, optimization of time, predictability of outcomes. That all goes with an industrial frame of mind.
In the more competitive world of trade and commerce that followed the Renaissance, time became money. Manufacturers began seeking ways to produce their wares more quickly. Here at England's famous Wedgwood pottery factory, one of the first assembly lines was developed in the 18th century. The process still operates in much the same manner today, with each craftsperson down the line performing a specific task, a time-saving measure. The Industrial Revolution possible to turn out textiles and other goods in a fraction of the time that was formerly required. Benjamin Franklin marveled at the efficiency of the new machines.
If every man and woman would work for 4 hours each day on something, that labor would procure all the necessaries and comforts of life.
4 hours. But during the 19th century, many factory owners forced their employees to work 14 hours a day instead.
This new building behind me was built in 1806 by a man called Benjamin Gott. He was a local merchant. Benjamin Gott was probably a little in advance of his time. Certainly was a very progressive person. And he laid down some rules when he put his mill in. He didn't want to employ children who were younger than 10 years old. And no child worked more than 16 hours in a day.
Not only were hours longer, most holidays were abolished. Only on Sundays were the work week.
And people look at that period of time and they say, wow, we've had tremendous progress since then. We're down to a 4-hour week, roughly speaking. And look at all the great things that our economic system has brought us. Not only has it made it healthier, but it's also given us a lot more free time. What they forget is that if you looked a little bit farther back in history, the 18th and 19th centuries were absolutely unusual because they were a period in which working hours had already roughly doubled.
From the beginning, workers resisted these new demands for their time. Shorn of their old religious holidays, they invented a new one, St. Monday, after a Sunday like this one.
Monday they would wake up with a hangover and come in late. And that was often known as the privilege of St. Monday. It was a way of having Monday morning at least off.
We mean to make things over. We're tired of
Eventually, individual resistance gave way to organized rebellion.
We want to feel the sunshine and we want to smell the flowers. We are sure that God is willing and we mean to have 8 hours. We're summoning our forces from the shipyard, shop and mill. 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will, 8 hours for work.
In the United States, large-scale protests first erupted in May of 1886, when 500,000 workers marched for an 8-hour workday.
The demand for shorter hours was, and specifically for the 8-hour day, was the demand of the labor movement in the 1880s, and I think in no city more than in Chicago did it reach larger proportions.
At that time, this Chicago street corner was known as Haymarket Square. Few passers-by realized that the most significant event in the struggle for shorter hours occurred right here. On May 4th, 1886, a confrontation between protesters and police turned violent when someone, no one to this day knows who, threw a bomb. Shooting broke out and several policemen were killed. 9 leaders of the 8-hour movement trial for the kills. Despite the lack of evidence, 4 of the accused were sent to the gallows. Thousands of angry mourners attended their funeral.
The trial has long since been regarded as one of the most notoriously biased in American history. The Haymarket Martyrs were the first martyrs of the struggle for the 8-hour day and recognized as such throughout the world.
But their dream would not be realized until 1938, when the 8-hour day and the 40-hour week were signed into law by President Roosevelt. And by then, the American labor movement was already fighting for a 6-hour day.
We propose that the hours of work in America shall be reduced to the point where the slack of unemployment shall be taken up, and for that reason we stand unflinchingly for the application of the 6-hour day and the 5-day week in industry.
It was the heart of the Great Depression. With more than a quarter of the population jobless, the call went out to share the work by reducing the work week to 30 hours.
You won't find the date in most history books, but you can imagine the excitement in U.S. labor circles when word came out of this building on April 6, 1933, that a bill had passed the U.S. Senate making the official work week in the United States 30 hours, anything else overtime. That was over 60 years ago.
This is the high water point of the politics of shorter hours. Never before or since has the issue come to such a head.
Bill died House of Representatives, and the National 30 Hours campaign died with it. Some businesses, though, had already adopted the 30-hour week voluntarily. Battle Creek, Michigan, the breakfast cereal capital of the world, during the development of a remarkable experiment. In 1930, the W.K. Kellogg Company took bold action to reduce it.
Mr. Kellogg instituted a 6-hour work shift, shifting from people being on duty 8 hours a day to 6 hours a day, and that effectively put, the numbers you look at, that effectively put 200 to 400 additional people on the payrolls during the Depression.
The experiment was an immediate success. With 2 years, Kellogg was able to pay his 6-hour workers what he'd previously paid them for 8 hours. He also put money into recreational opportunities for his employees: playgrounds and parks, swimming pools, nature centers, and libraries.
He was thinking about the workers. He thought that this leisure would enrich the family, would enrich community life, and so forth. He was ahead of his time, a welfare capitalist with some radical ideas, the most radical of which is leisure. Leisure is the finest product, short hours, the finest product of capitalism, not economic growth, perpetual economic growth, not full-time work, expanding forever, but expanding leisure would, for Kellogg, the flower, the crowning achievement of capitalism.
But after Kellogg retired, the company waged a 40-year campaign to return to 8-hour shifts.
The new managers thought 6 hours was too expensive. It cost, in terms of fixed costs, it cost the fringe benefits.
That all culminated in 1985 when the company and the union agreed to end the 6-hour workday in light of the tremendous competitive situation that the company was trying to compete in a global market.
Oh yeah, Kellogg's wasn't our life while we were working there.
Back in the 1950s, when Chuck and Julia Blanchard both worked on the shift at Kellogg's, they were often photographed as model employees.
As I understand what you said, you shared not only your job at Kellogg's, but also your home, the duties at home.
Yes, yes.
Oh, yeah.
We were way ahead of our time in that Chuck took care of the kids.
Yeah.
And he helped with the housework.
Dr. Benjamin Honeycutt has interviewed scores of former Kellogg's employees about the 6-hour workday. More than 3/4 remember it fondly.
You had more talent, that was for sure. And like one fellow said, when you got out of there, you wasn't all wore out.
Ida Sides was still working on the 6-hour shift in 1985 when it ended.
I was really sorry that they phased it out. As a matter of fact, the final day that they phased it out, we had a funeral. And some of the employees, they made a makeshift casket.
Ida even wrote a poem occasion.
Farewell, good friends, old 6 hours. Now you're gone, and we all so. Get out those vitamins and give your doctor a call, because old 8 hours got us all.
This is the kitchen of tomorrow, a press-button dream coming true for Mrs. Housewife. All sorts of...
If shorter hours through working was the theme of the 1930s, shorter hours through technology was the promise of the 50s.
What's for dinner? Consult the menus on pictures and dish up something new for a change. Hummingbird wings on toast, maybe. And look where the toaster is. A wave of the hand and presto, down comes a hidden cabinet with the dishes. Mama will feel like a fairy princess with a magic wand in a place like this.
Automation enters the nursery in this playful prediction from Buddha. One nurse at a central control panel will be able to manage a whole brigade of babies, and the tykes will spend happily antiseptic infancies untouched by human hands. They'll even be tucked into their cribs by remote control.
Whatever needed to be done, a machine would do it for us. Experts predicted a 22-hour work week by 1985, 14 by the year 2000. Maybe it could have happened, but it didn't.
The performance of the U.S. economy since the Second World War provides us with really what is an incredible possibility. Every hour worked. We can now produce twice as much in that hour as we could 40 years ago. And what's happened is that we've put all of that economic progress into producing more things. So our consumption has doubled. Work hours have not fallen at all. In fact, our working hours have risen.
I know we're running on, but stay with us just a while longer because there is some good news. There are all kinds of things that people are doing to find more time, things you can do to find more time for yourself, things we can think about as a society. Please, just a little while longer, stay with us.
We could be making, I think, quite a bit more money than we are now. We don't have money. You know, we've got all the things that we want. I'd rather have time to read a book. I'd say 7:30 at the earliest. You might even want to make it later.
Frank Leverine and Wanda Urbanska are the authors of Simple Living, the story of their person in search of more time. 8 years ago, they were living the fast life in Los Angeles. Frank was a screenwriter, Wanda a newspaper reporter. They were succeeding in challenging, exciting careers, but they never had time for either.
There was always a sense that we were running out of time. I mean, we couldn't get things, all the things. I remember getting up in the morning and writing every day. I'd write a whole list of things that I had to do.
Other on Sundays, and that was about it. A lot of times we wouldn't see each other until 10 or 11 at night. It was really a one-dimensional life. Work was our life, and we didn't really have time for our relationship. We didn't have time for any kind of volunteer work, or even felt like we didn't even have time to recycle. We felt like that was, you know, that would take too much of our time to do something simple like that.
Frank made a bold move back to the fig orchard in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where Frank had grown up. He took over the orchard parents who were no longer able to run it. It was a very risky proposition because the orchard was $105,000 in debt and losing money every year.
But
These look like they've been dancing.
Making the orchard profitable again meant frequent bouts of hard work. It was almost a relief compared to the relentless pressure of Los Angeles.
The nice thing about an orchard is that it's a very seasonal thing, and once the apples are picked and sold, say by the 1st of November, you can really take your time getting the pruning done, jobs that need to be done. Back here at the orchard, and having a lot of free time has allowed me to take care of Dad in his old age. Dad is 85 now, and he's pretty much lost use of his left arm. And so he can't bathe himself, he can't do any errands, he can't really change clothes, those kinds of things. I really love my dad, and it's just nice to be able to do something like that for him, I think at this stage in his life when he's real vulnerable. You remember what your first car was years ago? Yeah.
Their new, slower-paced life also allows Frank and Wanda to be actively involved in the nearby community of Mount Airy.
I was born in Mount Airy, North Carolina. Proud of it. It's the hometown of Andy Griffith, and is somewhat the basis for the Andy Griffith show.
So you knew Andy Griffith way back then?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes. What holds that community together, we've both discovered, really, is having time for people.
Frank and I don't feel like we're dropouts. We're really drop in. You can't snap your fingers and have community. I mean, you do have to invest time. You do have to be a regular participant.
One Saturday each month, residents of Mount Airy bring their recyclables to a city park. Frank and Wanda are regular volunteers.
And it's a wonderful sort of social occasion. Everybody feels so good when they're taking the time to recycle, and feels like they're doing the right thing.
Today, Frank Leverine and Wanda Urbanska are living on far less money than they did in Los Angeles. They're downshifters, part of a growing group of people who are deliberately choosing to sacrifice money for time.
In many cases, this is a real struggle. It's an emotional and obviously practical struggle, financially and everything else. It's not something that happens overnight, and you got to really want to do it to make it work. But it can work if a person is committed to it. Just as, you know, committed in the same way maybe they once were to climbing a career ladder.
I think that most people can make choices about consumption that actually will, in many cases, increase the amount of time that they have to do other things in life besides work.
We are going in a downwardly mobile direction. Americans have been since 1973. But what I think is it's not such a tragedy. I think people ought to embrace it and see the positive value of it, and see that, you know, simple living is a is a better way to live.
It seems that many Americans are starting to agree. The idea of downshifting has been gaining popularity. A poll conducted for the Hilton hotel chain found that just over half of all Americans, and 70% of those earning more than $30,000 a year, say that they would trade a day's pay for a day off each week. Several other opinions have reached similar conclusions. A 1990 Roper poll found that for the first time in 15 years, leisure time, work, is the most important thing for Americans.
People want more leisure time, even if it means less money at the workplace, even if it means sacrificing some part of their career goals. They want to spend more time with community. They want to smell the roses.
Well, we should see what's coming up, because next week we're also going to be faced with this too, so we might have some other problems.
Are we next week too?
No, but Sally is, and we're going to have to...
Oh, we're going to have to get it together for her.
Seattle Times reporter Carol Ostrom and two of her colleagues found a way to downshift without giving up their careers. It's called job sharing.
Okay. I think all of us felt like we just didn't have enough time in our lives. I had a contract for a book, I had a relationship I was trying to keep going, and I had a stressful job, and I just said, things got to break. I started thinking of all the things that could go, and working less seemed to be the answer.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Carol and her colleagues were unsuccessful the first time they asked if the three of them could share 2 jobs.
They thought it was a horrible idea, and one female supervisor was very negative about it. We tried it again about a year and a half later, and this time it was accepted on a provisional basis. They said, we'll give it a try. Lots of stuff was built in that they could just exit, with a minute's notice.
The 3 reporters each work 4 months full-time and get 2 months off on a rotating basis. For Carol, it means the opportunity to take better care of her mother.
Did you enjoy the books?
Oh, yes, especially the one about Truman.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one, wasn't it?
I liked that a lot.
Let's see your list. My mom keeps saying, what would I do without you? What would I do without you? And I don't really have any good answers. I'm not sure. She's 85 years old and she's very independent, but things are just not working as well as they used to.
Bring your list.
Life, generally, I care of the things, and my relationship is working better, and I have time to think, and that's probably the most important thing. While I'm off, I read the newspaper. I read the New York Times. I read magazines. I can think about story ideas. I think it makes us smarter reporters and smarter writers.
These reporters have really made a commitment to it so that I feel we get more work, more production, more energy out of them in the window that they're here than we might a reporter who's here 12 months a year. At first I was very skeptical about it, but I couldn't be happier with how it's working now. I really feel that these are some of our very best and most productive reporters.
Though few have initiated job sharing, some corporate executives are recognizing, however belatedly, the time pressures that workers feel.
We have to give the individual the ability to live a full and beneficial life. We can't break down the family further. The family is being lost, and you see tremendous cost to the society as a whole. Failure to train our children, failure for parents to have time to leave work and go to critical events with their children. And business has got to recognize that a downtrodden employee is not a benefit.
But if the record of the last few years is any indication, that recognition is far from widespread. During the most recent recession, many companies demanded more overtime from some employees while laying off thousands of others. Despite rising unemployment, the use of overtime recently rose to its highest level ever. In fact, an AFL-CIO study came to a startling conclusion, that if hours of overtime were simply reduced to the levels of 1982, 3 million new jobs could be created.
So what we basically have in this country right now is
many people working many more hours than they would really prefer to work. They'd like to spend that time with their families, taking some vacation time, that sort of thing, or perhaps even getting some further in their education, or just simply enjoying leisure. While many other people are suffering, serious deprivation because they can't find jobs, or they're having to take part-time jobs because full-time jobs are not available.
Lots of under the age of 30 assume that, the 40-hour work week came from the same place that water comes from. It's always been there. It's always been that way.
They call themselves the Boston Shorter Hours Working Group, and they hope to be a catalyst for new legislation that would officially reduce the American work week for the first time since 1938.
Well, actually, we first got together to talk about our own lives and kind of a support group about working less hard and setting sort of a better example than the way we were living our lives. And then we started talking together about what we could actually do and what a group could do, or what people together could do to not just pull back from work a little bit in their own lives, but to make it possible for everybody to do that.
What does it mean to have, the pursuit of life and liberty if you only have time to go to work and do your shopping and your laundry?
What are the consequences of nobody having time for kids?
Yeah.
They go from overworked parents to overworked daycare workers and back again with nobody basically able to pay attention.
This is related to everything from teenage pregnancy to SAT scores.
We started reading our history and thought, well, working people have managed to pass laws before that limited the amount of work hours. And we thought it was time to really start a movement that would pass shorter work time legislation again in this country. And there's probably other things that we need that we haven't even been bold enough to think of or offer yet. But sabbaticals every 7 years. People in academia have it. They recharge their batteries. A couple of enlightened employers talk about it now. I mean, for workers, not just for professionals.
I would certainly be willing to wager that when folks first started talking about the 40-hour work week, the same kind of arguments that we are hearing against shorter work time now are the kind of arguments that were used then. People will lose their jobs, business will never go for it, it isn't going to work, it's going to cost too much. None of those things turned out to be true.
That message has at least one supporter in Congress.
I believe that we have to create jobs by reducing the work week, by reducing overtime, by stopping forced overtime, and by making sure that when we hire a person, we give them a livable wage. And in my opinion, America's not doing that.
A very important step is to raise wages for the lowest paid workers in the economy, because there are many workers in this economy who have to work very, very long hours just because their hourly wages are so low. And that shorter hours are not possible for those people until their wages are increased.
All right. Thank you. Instructions on the back for what to do with it after you
A shorter work week is one legislative possibility, but not the only one.
6-week vacation petition.
During the 1992 election, San Francisco lawyer Richard Such ran an unusual political campaign, trying enough signatures to put a measure on the California ballot that would have required 6 weeks vacation for all workers.
Yeah, there you go. First began to be bothered by the fact that we have so little vacation time when I read about the European scheme, and in particular the fact that all German workers have at least a 6-week vacation every year. I think maybe my national pride was aroused and began to feel, well, if those countries, Germany in particular, can have it, why can't we? Want a copy of the petition?
With no money for television and no support from business, Such failed to collect the required number of signatures. But his campaign for more leisure did attract considerable interest from time-pressured citizens.
Certainly a number of people have written to me and said 6 weeks vacation with pay is a great idea, but we'd be happy to have 6 weeks vacation without pay if we could just have some more time off work. It's time that we took a step backwards and began to enjoy the fruits of all this labor. Like a copy of the 6-week vacation?
That's what the Germans have been doing for many years now. This is Regensburg, a picture book Bavarian city that's home to one of the world's most modern automobile factories. Employees at BMW Regensburg put in a 36-hour work week. That's typical of German workers. They also enjoy 30 days of vacation and numerous other holidays. We got this footage of the Regensburg BMW assembly line from the company, because when we were in town, the plant was closed for a Bavarian holiday called Whit Week. Company spokesman Rudolf Ebner met us at his home, where he and his family were also enjoying the time off.
Our workers have to work 400 hours less than American workers in the average of a year. And they enjoy to have more time for families, for hobbies, sports, to build houses or gardens, something like that. They enjoy it.
Diana Orlet is a file clerk at the Schering Company, a large chemical firm in Berlin. Like American postal worker Angela Walrond, she's a single mother, but she experiences just a trifle of the time pressure facing Angela.
Zwischen 8 und 8:45 an zu arbeiten in meinem Büro.
I start working sometime between 8 and 8:45 and work for 6 hours. Then I go home around 2 p.m. and the rest of my day is filled with taking care of the house and grocery shopping. And I also have lots of hobbies: sports, aerobics, riding my bike a lot with my son, going to movies, reading and learning other languages. The nicest thing is that I get as much vacation time as a full-time employee, 31 days a year.
Diana also earns enough to live comfortably on just 6 hours of work a day. And she gets full benefits, which in Germany come from the government, not the employer.
Mit der Versicherung ist es so, dass die Krankenkasse hier
The
eigentlich
state insurance agency takes care of everything: Social Security, unemployment, health care.
etc. Job wirklich sehr zufrieden.
I'm really satisfied with my job. If I could, I'd probably even work longer hours. But I work less because I need time for my child and for myself. That's important too.
Für mein Kind habe und für mich. Ist auch ganz wichtig.
There is pride in the work here, and you can see that in what's produced. But work is very much a place where one gathers the material and money to do something else. Work is not an end in itself.
By 1995, the German work week will be only 35 hours long. And a recent agreement between employers and Germany's largest union will mean still fewer hours in the future, though with somewhat lower wages. Polls say Americans would trade money for time if they could. Germans are doing it.
We have to take this issue seriously now, and we have to begin a national debate, and we have to intervene in the market process to ensure that people get free time.
Should we reduce working hours? Doing so would obviously be costly. Yet can't we offer Angela Walrond what Germany provides for Diana Orlet? And what are the costs of our current epidemic of time pressure and overwork? Declining health, splintered families, delinquency, depression, inadequate learning, industrial accidents, tired and weakened communities, rising unemployment.
Benjamin Franklin once said that time is money. Well, for many Americans, time is a good deal more precious than money these days. Time, after all, cannot be created or invested. What may be possible, though, is a little sensible trading, to put the time we need to live our lives ahead of more money or more things. I'm Scott Simon, and thank you for giving us more than a few moments of your time.
I pulled such promise, I wish I had it all. If I only had the time, I'd love you more and more. I've got 1 foot in the house, man, 1 foot out the door. I've got 1 foot in the house and 1 foot out the door. If I only had the time, if I only had the time, if I wasn't working overtime.